welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. So if you saw my last video, which I posted about a week ago, I was talking about how I have been off of long form videos for a little while and I'm getting back into it, especially as we're getting into the new year pretty soon. I've had a lot of new followers and subscribers join me on YouTube as well as Instagram and TikTok, which I will link all of my links down below if you want to follow me on another platform. But I have gained a lot of new people following me, so I just wanted to do a quick little Q&A, especially if you're a newer follower, you can get to know me. So I posted on my Instagram and my community tab on YouTube asking you guys what questions you have, and I got a bunch of questions, so I want to go through and answer some of those today. So the first question I got was, what are your top favorite things about living in Philly? Cafes, restaurants, things to do, etc. for somebody who's moving here next summer. Well, I will say welcome neighbor, or soon-to-be neighbor. I love living in Philadelphia. I really hope that you love it when you move here. One of my favorite things about living in Philly is how walkable it is. I'm about to turn 28 years old. I have never owned a car ever in my life, and living in Philly is definitely the easiest place I've ever lived without a car. I live in Center City, so I feel like everything that I really need is within probably like a 6-block radius of my house, or even closer than that. Philly is super walkable. The transit in Philly isn't the best, but we do have like okay transit that can get you to places that are a little further out. So that's definitely one thing. I love everything being really close walking distance. There's also so many fun things to do in Philadelphia. We have the art museum that's amazing, the Philadelphia Museum of Art. There's also a lot of other art and history museums. I have actually not been to a lot of the museums and I would like to go. I did go to the Mutter Museum a little while ago before all of the drama has been going on with the Mutter Museum. If you don't know what I'm talking about, maybe I'll try to link something down below that explains like the mess that is going on at the Mutter Museum right now. But the Mutter is a museum of medical history, basically. It's a very interesting place. I also have seen a lot of theater in Philadelphia. We have the Kimmel Center, which is like a theater that touring Broadway shows will come through. So I've seen a couple of shows there. There's some really great other local professional theaters. There's the Walnut Street Theater, the Philadelphia Theater Company. I also have a friend who does improv. So once in a while, I'll go to one of his improv shows and those are really fun. I also love all of the farmers markets in Philadelphia. The one that I go to most often is the Rittenhouse Farmers Market because that's the one that's closest to where I live. But there's also a farmer's market in Clark Park that's pretty good. There's one in Head House Square, and there's a whole bunch of them all over the city. Those are the ones that I typically go to, but there are a lot. Like if you live in South Philly, there's a few down there. There's a few in like Fishtown and Kensington area. So all over the place. There's really, really good farmers markets. There's also so much good thrifting. I have 2 huge videos that I did about thrifting in Philadelphia, so I will link those in the description so you can check those out if you're into thrifting, secondhand, and antiques. There's a lot of really, really good places. As for cafes and restaurants, Philadelphia has so much good food. I was just talking to somebody about this earlier today. Like, basically any neighborhood or area that you're in, there's at least like 5 excellent restaurants anywhere you go. Usually more, way more than that. So some of my favorite restaurants, one is Kalaya, which is in Fishtown. It's a Thai restaurant that is so good. It's like very elevated Thai food. It's beautifully decorated. There's also a new place that opened recently called Bar Leisure. That's a French restaurant that I really like. It's definitely pretty expensive and more of like a special occasion type of restaurant, but I really liked their food. There's also a lot of really great coffee shops if you drink coffee. No need to go to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, which there are plenty of those, but there's also a lot of really, really good, small, locally owned coffee shops. I am not a coffee drinker myself, so I always will get like a tea or a hot chocolate or a lemonade or something, but for coffee drinkers as well, there's tons and tons of local options, which are really good. The next question is, what are your hobbies in Philly? To be honest with you, I feel like I really need to develop more specific hobbies because right now my hobbies are kind of like hanging out with my friends, and we mostly will just like go for a walk or like sit around someone's apartment, have a glass of wine or something like that. or doing YouTube. That's one of my big hobbies that takes up a lot of my time, is making YouTube videos and short form content videos. Other than that, I don't have a lot of like Philly hobbies. I am part of a group called CASA, which is Court Appointed Special Advocates that works with children in foster care. I also have a whole video about that program. It's a really, really amazing volunteer program for people that want to work with foster children. So I do that. That takes about like an hour of my time every month or so. But I really want to get back into doing theater. Before COVID, I used to do a lot of community theater. So one of my goals in 2024 is to really like get back into that and start either like volunteering or audition for something or stage manage something. Like I used to do that a lot and I really, really have been missing it. So definitely something to look into for the new year. Somebody asked me, what is my favorite memory of my grandmother? And they said if it's too personal, you don't have to include it. Thank you for asking about that. You might know that my grandmother passed away recently. I think I talked about it in my last video and on my Instagram. And I don't find that question too personal. I think it's really special to talk about her and share about her a little bit. She was 96 years old, 96 and a half when she passed away. So she lived a really long, really interesting life. There's one that I was talking about with my siblings recently because it's like the holiday time now. When we were little kids, she had this like little thing that looked like a poinsettia plant in a pot, but it was like electronic and you could press a button on it and the flowers would spin around and it would play the song Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree. So whenever I hear that song, it makes me think about my grandma because she had this like little Christmas decoration that she would get out every year and we always wanted to press it like 100 times and she would have to be like, guys, this is enough. But another one of my favorite memories, and this is more of like a general memory about both of my grandparents, is that my grandfather was in the Navy for his whole career and he traveled all over the world. My grandmother went with him to certain duty stations, but a lot of his travels were in Asia and she did not go with him to those places, but he brought back a lot of really, really cool and interesting Asian furniture, mostly from Japan and China. I'm actually gonna do a whole video talking about pieces that I inherited from my grandparents because I was lucky enough to inherit a couple of really, really cool pieces that belong to them. But anyway, my dad said that when he was growing up, people would come over to their house and his friends would not ask like, is one of your parents Asian? They would ask him which one of your parents is Asian because it looked like, you know, the very Asian decor style house. And the real answer was, nope, it's just two old white people who love Asian design. But I think her house is such a like very special memory to me because they moved into that house in the 60s when my dad was a little kid and he grew up in that house and she lived there up until she passed away. So that house has been in our family for 60 years. And I just have so many positive memories associated with that house and like the layout of the house and the decor that they had and like their backyard and their neighborhood and like all of that stuff, because we visited my grandparents quite a lot when I was growing up, and just this feeling that I would get coming into their house. And even now, because I've been helping my parents with kind of like going through things and cleaning it out and figuring out what we're gonna keep and what we're gonna give away and whatever, like it's just been really special to reflect on the life that she had in her house for so many years. Somebody asked, what are your goals for the next 5 years? Ooh, 5 years feels like a long time. But like when I think about where I was 5 years ago, I'm about to turn 28. So 5 years ago, I was 23. I was like either just getting ready to graduate or had just graduated college, and like my life now is so completely different. So I imagine that in the next 5 years, my life will change a lot. I think one of my big goals is that I really would like to buy a house. I'm kind of looking into some first-time home buyer programs and stuff in Philadelphia. I am kind of thinking I would like to settle down in Philadelphia. So it would be really, really cool to become a homeowner within the next 5 years. I also have set some personal goals for like my career and my salary and stuff, like how much money I want to make by certain times in my career. I really want to get to like a certain level role within my company, or if it seems like that's not going to happen within my company, I might move to another job. So I think really I like to plan my goals in like a 1 year period because that seems much more like achievable to me. I do this thing every year because my birthday is in February, so it's at the beginning of the year where I will do a list of things where like the last one I did was 28 things to do before I turned 28. So it's basically like my goals for the year. Like this year, before I turn 28, what is most important to me to accomplish? And I try to make them into categories of like career related things, financial related things, personal enrichment, taking care of myself, routines, leisure things like reading books or taking trips, like all of that kind of stuff. So I take a little bit from all different categories. Oh, also friends and family is a huge one. Like on my list a couple years ago, I wrote like make a new friend or make sure that I visit my sister like X amount of times or something. So I feel like thinking in terms of like 1 year at a time is a little bit easier for me. I have made a lot of goals for 2024, so I might do a whole video about my goals for 2024 and like reflecting on this past year. But yeah, I would say my biggest goal I think for the next 5 years is to buy a house. That would be really cool to be a homeowner. It feels very hard to be a homeowner in this day and age, but we will see if I can do that. The next question is, what is your job or past jobs and which job has been your favorite? This is kind of a fun question, I think. So my job right now is that I work for a luxury French hair care company called Christophe Robin Paris. I will link it down below. The products are amazing, and I don't only say that because I have a sales role for this company, but I legitimately really love the products. It is pretty much all I use on my hair nowadays. My role for them is that I oversee all of our independent clients. So most of those are hair salons that carry the brand. We also have a small assortment of like pharmacies and boutiques that carry our brand. We're starting to move towards working with distributors. So that's kind of my new big project, is finding distributors to help us handle some of the brand. So we've signed on somebody who's going to handle the Northeast. And now I'm looking for someone to take over like the Midwest, the South, and Canada. So I oversee all the independent sales, but I'm gonna start to oversee distribution for the brand in North America as well. I've been working there for about 2 years. I really like it. As with any job, there's some like, you know, internal politics and weird things going on, but generally I really, really like my job a lot. In terms of past jobs, so my previous job right before I worked for Christophe Robin was with a company. I still don't know if I want to say their name because this is the company that I had the class action lawsuit with. And it wasn't just me, it was a class action lawsuit. So it was like 100 people. I really want to do like a full story time video about that company and all of the stuff that went on that led to the class action lawsuit. I think I'm allowed to do that. So I ended up getting paid out some money from the class action lawsuit, and both of the payments have gone through and like been cleared and whatever. I think I'm gonna wait until my taxes are filed for this year because the money has to do with like my taxes and I have to pay taxes a certain way on it. So I'm just gonna wait until all of that is done. And then when it's all settled and everything's good and I ask the attorney if I'm allowed to talk about certain things, then I will do a story time, because that company was crazy, but it was a market research company. I was doing a lot of like large scale research studies with them. I was in charge of like diversity and inclusion, making sure that we had good representation for the studies of like people that were different age groups, different ethnic groups, that sort of thing. So I did marketing and diversity and inclusion for them, and it was an interesting experience. Let's just leave it at that. Before that, I did some freelance work, and I actually worked for many years in like mostly marketing. So I worked for a couple of small businesses. For a while, I worked for an antique store that sold like very high-end 17th and 18th century furniture, mostly French and Italian furniture, but she had a little bit of everything. She was a really quirky, interesting lady that had this store, and I did her marketing and I did all her inventory management. I also famously worked for a store called Lilac Bijou in Annapolis. I worked there for 4 years while I was in college and a little bit after college. That is a clothing and jewelry boutique, and I was the manager there. I also did all of our email marketing, our social media marketing, our website. I kind of did a little bit of everything for them. And I'm still very close with the owner now. That was a great experience. I think that working for Lilac Bijou really is what helps me push my career towards what I'm doing now, which is like sales, operations, marketing, all of that stuff. I learned so much when I worked there. And before that, I had a bunch of different like weird little retail jobs here and there. I worked for a bagel shop for a little while. I worked in a daycare for a little while. My first job ever was working in a bridal studio. So I was doing like one-on-one consultations with brides and helping them choose their wedding dress. That was a really fun job, but I was like 16, 17 years old, didn't know what I was talking about. I don't know why anyone trusted me to give them advice on their wedding dress, but that was a really fun job. I sold a lot of wedding dresses, I made commission, and I learned a lot working there. I also was like a camp counselor for a theater camp. That was something I did like during high school time. I worked for another like little boutique in Annapolis that was like mostly jewelry, but also some other stuff. So like I've had many, many, many jobs over the years. I would say the question was, what is my favorite past job? Probably either Lilac Bijou or the job that I have now. And like I said, I think Lilac Bijou really set me up for the job that I have now. I learned so much from working at Lilac Bijou, and I feel like I carry it into my work now. I really like my job now though. I feel like this is my first like real big girl corporate job where I have a lot of potential to kind of either move up within this company or move up within another company. I really like being in the beauty industry. So yeah, I would say either this job that I have now with Christoph Robin or my previous job with Lilac Bijou would be my favorites. I think I told you guys in my last video that one of the reasons I've been having such a hard time consistently filming is because of all the weird noises going on in this apartment. Right now, there's this like pipe that's inside the wall, but I can hear it like making this weird noise. Do you hear that? I really hope that you don't. There's also like sirens going by outside, so I'm just gonna keep going. We're gonna get through this video, but I'm really sorry if you can hear any background noise. Okay. Next question, this is going to kick off a series of questions people ask me about thrifting. So the first one is, how often do you go thrifting, and do you place a limit on how much you spend each time? I go thrifting pretty often, I would say. I go at least like a couple times a month, whether that's doing like a big thrifting day where I'm like going with my boyfriend or my friends, we like drive out somewhere, or sometimes I just kind of walk around the neighborhood to places that are nearby me. I go to Buffalo Exchange a lot. That's where I buy like 99% of my clothes. That's where I bought this sweater that I'm wearing. So I would say I go probably a few times a month, not once a week, but like close to that, if that makes sense. And then do I place a limit on how much I spend each time? No, but I probably should. The hard thing with thrifting is that like you never know what you're gonna find and you never know how much it's gonna cost. But I do have kind of like a general idea of a budget. Like let's say I'm looking for a mirror for this specific place on my wall. I'll say like, okay, I want this type of mirror. I want it to be gold. I want it to be this sort of style. This is like approximately the size it needs to be. And like the max I would spend on this mirror is like $100 or something. And then if I find a mirror that's like $150, but it's perfect, like maybe I would go over my budget. But sometimes you find something that's well within your budget. So I try to think of things in like a maximum of like, what's the maximum I would spend for this thing? I do have certain items that I'm always kind of on the hunt for, but sometimes you just see something that you weren't expecting and it's perfect, and because it's thrifting, it's like one of a kind and you have to just snag it when you see it. So that does make it a little hard with like planning a budget for thrifting, but I do kind of just buy what I see. If I can afford it and if it's the perfect thing, I will buy it. Next question feeds into this really well, which is, what is your dream thrift find / holy grail item? That's so hard to answer because I really feel like most of my like holy grail items or like my favorite things that I found were things that were like totally unexpected. Like for example, I have this bust of Shakespeare that's probably like this big, like it's pretty good size. I actually talked about it in this video, which I will link above and in the caption down below, but I bought this Shakespeare bust and like, did I walk into the thrift store expecting to find this like huge, amazing bust of Shakespeare that was a reasonable price? No. But I found it and I bought it. So it's hard to say like, what's your holy grail item that you're on the hunt for, because typically it's something that you don't even know you would find, you know? But there are some things that I am looking for right now. One of the things I'm really struggling to find is a circle rug that is 6 feet in diameter. I need that for my office area. I'm trying to do this little makeover on my office room because that room is really empty and I want a circle rug and it has to be 6 feet. I found a couple of circle rugs on like Facebook Marketplace that are 8 feet diameter, but that would be too big. I don't want to spend a fortune on it, and rugs can be really expensive. So it's just taking me a while to find the perfect rug for in there. So if I found something like that, that would be a holy grail. I will say my holy grail thing that I found in the past that I feel like is an unbeatable thrift find is that one time at Goodwill, I found a KitchenAid stand mixer that was in perfect condition, nothing wrong with it at all, for $25. And I think those retail for like $300 or $350 or something, and somebody just gave theirs to Goodwill and it had no issues. Several people tried to stop me on the way out of the store being like, oh my God, are you definitely getting that? Like, did you test it? Does it work? Like, other people really like wanted it because they knew it was such a good find. And I was like, no, I'm getting this. So I paid $25 for a KitchenAid mixer, which I loved. The next question is, how did you get into thrifting and antiques? I think I've talked about this before on this channel, but my father is actually an antiques collector. He mostly collects antique books, and he collects a pretty like specific niche of books. He collects what he calls juvenile series books primarily. So that's going to be like Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, Tom Swift, like those kind of series books that were popular when he was a kid. That's how he got into it. He also sometimes collects like Dr. Seuss or Raggedy Ann and Andy or Dick and Jane. Like there's certain editions of certain books that are like first editions that are really valuable. So he mostly collects like children's series books. But because of that, he was always going to like flea markets and yard sales and antique malls and stuff when I was growing up. And so we would kind of go as a family to all these things. And my dad would give us, you know, $10 or something. And he was trying to teach us like, don't buy the first thing you see, like look around at everything and decide what you want to spend your $10 on. But because my dad would give me a couple dollars when we would go to these things, I started collecting stuff when I was a kid. So my first collections were things like cameos. I had a small collection of like cameo necklaces and pins. I also had a collection of shells. That was really my first collection, was my shells. I collected like some antique stores, you would find like a jar of random mismatched buttons. I had a bunch of those that I would beg my dad to let me get. So that's kind of what I started out collecting. And then I got into books. And so I started collecting books. Like I collect certain Shakespeare editions. I collect Franklin Library editions and some other books and stuff. And now as I've gotten older and, you know, I've moved into my own place and stuff, I collect a lot of like antique furniture and decor. But yeah, I really got into it through my dad. My dad has been collecting for as long as I have been alive, as long as I remember. And so he really instilled in me like the value in things that are old and things that can be repurposed and have a long life and things that are well made and things that are one of a kind and unique. And it also created that kind of excitement, you know, for him as somebody who collects series books. Like let's say you've collected the whole series except for number 12, you know, you're on the hunt for number 12, and then when you find it, it's like this really big exciting moment. And I think that I feel the same way about furniture, decor, anything in my house. Like it's really fun to wait and find the perfect thing when it comes along, and it's much more exciting and satisfying to like acquire that thing when you've been looking for it for a long time. The final question for this video is, how would you describe your home decor style and your fashion style? Let's start with fashion, I guess, because I feel like fashion is honestly something I feel a little bit lost with. Like I'm really trying to get back into fashion and putting outfits together, because that used to be one of my favorite things in the entire world when I was growing up. Like especially when I was in middle school and high school, I would wear the wackiest outfits to school. I don't know why my mom let me go to school in some of these outfits, but she really let me have free expression to dress kind of however I wanted. And I really wish that I had maintained that, because I think as I've gotten older and like my body has changed and I've gained weight, like it's been so hard for me to find clothes that I feel really good in. And as I've been on this whole journey of like self-acceptance and body neutrality and all of this stuff, I feel like I'm starting to really dip my toe back into fashion again. I really would love to start making more like fashion and clothing videos, but I just feel very hesitant about like showing my whole body on camera. So that's something that I hope I can get to. So I really don't know how I would describe my fashion style. I guess I wear a lot of like long flowy dresses. Like this sweater that I'm wearing has these like puffy balloon sleeves. I like stuff like that. I really love jewelry. I love like funky, interesting jewelry. I also love dainty jewelry. Like my favorite jewelry brand is Catbird, which makes like the most amazing, like dainty recycled gold, like beautiful little pieces. So I don't know how I would describe my fashion style. As for my home decor style, I would definitely say antique. I don't know about eclectic. I like the word eclectic, but I don't think my home is really eclectic. Like I think people who have an eclectic home have a much more like funky style than I do. I also think of eclectic as being colorful, which I'm not so much colorful. I'm kind of trying to lean in the direction of my home being kind of like an elegant French sort of style without going too far into the like glam thing, because like the glam style is its whole thing and it's not really for me. I really like more of the like antique French classic sort of style. I like a little bit of mid-century modern sprinkled in. I have a couple mid-century modern pieces. I love unusual things like tapestries, like this right here, which you can't really see behind me, is a tapestry on the wall. I have another tapestry in my dining room. I also have things on the wall like a bundle of lavender that I've put up on the wall as if it's a piece of art. So I really like having like 3D things. I've also started getting more into like sculptures and statues and stuff. So I don't know that I have like a specific word that I would boil it down to other than like antique and vintage, but that's kind of a little overview of some of the things that I like the most. And those are all the questions that I had for this video. Thank you guys so much for those of you who submitted the questions. If you have anything else you want me to answer, you can leave it in the comments down below or send me a message on Instagram. I always am happy to chat with you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!